If you ever wondered what the front lines looked like during the onset of the pandemic, if you also wondered what some of the effects were inside the hospitals, and also how it really was, even from medical freedom perspectives or pressures that were given to the employees in the hospitals. And then, if you want to hear a wonderful story of healing with a carnivore journey, then this episode is probably for you. Nora Kemmerer and I talk a lot about what happened in the last few years. The problem is, I think it's a high chance that it will get banned from this platform. So, given that, we have decided to only share certain clips in this interview so that you can see some amounts of the conversation. But I highly, highly encourage you to watch this whole interview. We put a lot of heart, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of real talk and raw and realness. And it just shares a glimpse of what Nora has seen on the front lines, what happened to her when she decided to use her medical freedom, and my own experience when I try to share about what I thought about the new during that time, and then how I got backlash for it, and even from my friends and family. All right, guys, make sure to check out the full episode on Rumble, but here's some clips from the interview. Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Judy Cho, and I'm board certified in holistic nutrition. And I have a private practice where we focus on root cause healing, and it often starts with the Carnivore Cures all meat elimination diet. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Nora Kemmerer. I had the pleasure of meeting Nora in person at KetoCon this year, 2023. We talked a lot about her healing journey and her weight loss journey, as well as lots of other things that she has just experienced in the last couple of years, especially because of the pandemic and all the events that led after. So she was in a lot of the rooms where a lot of the doctors and nurses were too scared to go in because the patient was dying from the illness. I wanted people to really listen to Nora's story and just our share about a lot of the stuff that goes on, and that many of us have not been able to really share our story or have felt isolated because of the stance that we have taken. I hope that this conversation shows that maybe the way you have viewed everything that has happened in the pandemic, that you are not alone. Let's get right into the interview. Hi, Nora. I am so excited for you to just join me today and share your story. It's a pretty powerful one. So if you can just introduce yourself and how you found carnivore.
Thank you, Judy, for inviting me on your show. I'm a huge fan and have been for the past 3 years. I started carnivore, I just stumbled across it thanks to Dr. Robert Kiltz. He is the owner of CNY Fertility up in New York, and I had been a patient of his. I tried keto for a few years, off and on, from 2017 to 2020. And when my last IVF transfer failed in January 2020, I had a lot of questions. And the biggest one is, what can I do to improve myself for next time? Will there be a next time? A lot of people know IVF takes a toll on the body, and I had not given it all I could. Dr. Kiltz did mention carnivore to me. I honestly don't know if it was through a personal text message. He was interested that I was in cardiology and was opening my mind to an all meat diet. He said, since keto didn't work for me too well, based on those keto treats that I indulged in too many times, I decided to try carnivore. And that was spring 2020. And it was an easy transition, surprisingly enough.
And then walk me through. So you mentioned that you offline, you mentioned about antidepressants. So if you can just tell me, what got you started on antidepressants, and then how you weaned off maybe through the carnivore diet, and then if you had any ramifications of getting off of it.
Oh, definitely. Oh gosh. So I went through normal teenage hormonal stuff, had issues with parents, boy troubles, school troubles, fitting in. So I was diagnosed as having a chemical imbalance at an early age of about 16. At that time, I saw a psychiatrist and a therapist. I was immediately placed on 2 antidepressants at the same time, along with a sleep aid. just for normal teenage problems. Looking back, that's what they were. Over the next 5 years, they slowly added more medications. And finally, in my early 20s, I knew something was off. So I did wean myself down to finally 2 medications again. I believe it was an anti-anxiety and then an antidepressant. I never felt right though on them. I was just in a cloud. And so in my, let's say, early 30s, I did try to get off of them a couple times, but I was on the standard American diet. I was eating sugar all the time. I was drinking, and it was just my husband and I working hard, playing hard, and I was on these pills, but I knew something wasn't right. Then let's see. So I started the carnivore diet and I felt amazing. I did allow some red wine while I was on carnivore, so I was about 95%. But my mood changed and I was clear headed for the first time ever. And I thought for the first time I could safely get off these drugs. We obviously had not been successful in getting pregnant. I wanted to do everything I could to be toxin free and med free. So, with the help of a naturopathic doctor, I added a few supplements, ashwagandha, and a couple others, and slowly weaned off of my antidepressants. I did not have any issues getting off of them, and it did take 6 months, but I safely got off of them, and I've been med free completely for 2 years. And I was on those drugs for almost 20 years.
Wow. So for 20 years, you were on some type of antidepressant, maybe anti-anxiety, and then it took about
Yes,
a shorter period of time to wean off them, and you weaned off them successfully.
completely.
That is
Yes.
amazing. Yeah, we hear of a lot of people that go through a carnivore diet. Maybe they do some gut healing, but absolutely their mental health starts improving. And so there are people that can wean off. I have had a few clients that they can't wean off to the smallest dose, but or they can't wean off completely. And there might be some other imbalance, but maybe they'll get to the smallest dose. But that is amazing that you were able to fully get off. Do you struggle with any mental health since in the last 2 years of weaning off of them?
Yes, but I just think that's normal life. And what I've gone through in the past 2 to 3 years,
Okay,
that's taken a toll.
right.
But then I changed my mindset, and I know that there are healthy alternatives to antidepressants since I lived in a cloud for 20 years. And my husband comments he never saw a difference. Even when I got off them, I was a little more clear headed, but there was no benefit that we could see to the antidepressants.
Okay.
So when I do get into a slump, I will call a friend or I'll sit down with my husband and say, okay, need to vent. And I'll go for a walk. I'll do yoga. I will do something healthy instead.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I have had a very similar experience with you in the past, so I totally get it. Let's talk about the last 2 years of your life, because I think anyone that's gone through what you have gone through would absolutely have had a lot of ups and downs with mood. So that is completely normal. And I think as people hear your story, they will understand that. Maybe if you can just tell us a little bit about, I read your blog about the last couple years of your journey, and it's really, really powerful. But maybe if you could just start where you feel like it's comfortable to start the story and then just continue on.
Sure. So the pandemic hit us in February, March 2020, and I was on the front lines. I am a cardiac sonographer. I do anything and everything with the heart. I used to assist in surgeries. I do ultrasounds of the heart. You name it, I do it. And I was working at a major hospital in Fredericksburg, Virginia at the time. And all of a sudden on the news, this illness was sweeping across and it had entered the US, and we were to prepare. I'm not going to lie, I was a little excited because we've dealt with tuberculosis, we've dealt with other contagious illnesses, and it was the unknown. So I actually scanned the first positive patient in Northern Virginia. I offered. I'm young, healthy-ish, or so I thought at the time. This was right when I was transitioning into carnivore. And so I scanned that patient, no questions asked. I suited up, put on my 2 masks, my goggles, my hairnet, my booties, covered my machine, and walked in, did my job, and walked out with a bunch of people on the other side of the glass watching me. A couple weeks later, I was still healthy, and so were my coworkers. I was still offering to scan COVID, the positive patients as they came in, and no questions asked. I was just doing my job. That's all. But I kept hearing about these deaths on the news and how everyone was getting sick.
You mentioned that your hospital, so a lot of the news showed that hospitals were overrun, and then there were these makeshift places created so that people can get care. And you said you saw something different. What happened in your hospital and then the other hospital you worked at?
So we created a makeshift hospital for the positive patients out in the garage. They spent, I don't know how much money on this, and it remained shut down the entire duration I was at this hospital. My hours were cut from 40 to 50 hours a week to 20, and I couldn't survive on that. Our hospital was not overran. And being in cardiology, you would think that, and this virus affecting the lungs, therefore the heart, that I would have job security, and I didn't. We were sent home a lot. We were called off a lot.
And then let's bring in the time where now this shot is around and where people are starting to have mandates about it. Can you talk about your experience when once that started being released, and what your experience was?
And I think a lot of the Instagram influencers, I don't know what else to call them, but they started having me ask questions about what I'm putting in my body. What am I putting on my body? At that point, I was noticing that my lotion that I was putting on my body had chemicals in it. So I switched to that. So I was already asking all of these questions. And then this miraculous shot comes around, and I was like, but I feel better than I ever have. And I'm not sick. So why do I want to take this? And then also with the fertility, well, the shot started rolling out and everyone rolled up their sleeves immediately. And then I started noticing I was actually given the ultimatum. I was all but running the echo lab at that point, and I did have to leave my job over refusing the shot.
Well, thank you for being brave and sharing all of that. That's not easy to share.
And none of it makes sense. It still doesn't to this day, but I don't regret my decision one bit.
And so even though you were in that room with them, you never got it, or you never showed symptoms
Never.
of that. That's crazy.
Never. I never, even with that little sinus infection that I had for 24 hours, I never, no, I never had the symptoms. No, it's been great.
You mentioned in your blog post that you felt some ostracism from some of the patients that, at one point you were caring for them and then they were starting to ask you questions. And if you could share a little bit about that.
Right when the shot rolled out in January, it was the number one question. Have you had your shot yet? Have you had your second shot? Well, how many are you going to get? Which shot are you going to get? And I got this. I would see at the hospital, I saw about 8 patients a day. And everyone that wasn't intubated would ask me that question. And I would say, well, I'm on the fence right now. I'm seeing, you're masked, I'm masked. We're safe. I'm healthy. And I was called many names when I said I was hesitant. Well, how dare you touch me? What do you mean you're not getting this shot? It could save your life. It could save my life. And
right.
But I was called a murderer a couple times. I can say that with a smile on my face now, but that did lead to a lot of depression over the past 3 years. That did lead to a significant mental health decline. My whole job for the past 13 years has been to take care of people.
Right.
And I've put my health on the line by being on call and going in at 2 a.m. to take care of these patients. I did everything I could to make me healthy so that I could take care of these people.
Right.
And to be called a murderer, because I didn't want to inject something unknown into me.
I'm sorry that you went through that. I can totally uh, feel your hurt, and it's unjust because I think what's hard, just being in the social media space, I think the hardest part is when you know your intent and when it's misjudged, when you know that's not your heart, right? So you're actually trying to help these people, and then they're saying you're a murderer. So I totally get it. I understand how hard that must have been, but you sharing your story now and what you've been through and what you've seen will help more people that were not given the time to share their stories, and all the people that have been through what you've been through, because there are a lot that don't get the time on mainstream media to share their stories, because I think there are more people like you. But maybe in that moment we have the highest mortality rate of children in all the world. And then you compare it to poverty and wealth. And we are, again, still like, you have a higher chance of a healthy baby if you were born in some poor country than if you were born in America. And I started
Correct.
carnivore care that way because I know it makes no sense of why are you starting carnivore care with maternities, like maternal death and baby death. But I was so shocked to see this, and I didn't know where to put it, but I wanted people to read it because, I mean, truly, I'm for the kids, but there's something wrong where we are one of the wealthiest countries and most fortunate countries, yet we have the highest mortality rate. My son had a skin bacterial infection, and we went to a dermatologist, and they wanted us to put topical antibiotics, and then separately they wanted us to take oral antibiotics. And this happened really recently, and so I asked, why does he have to take oral antibiotics when it's here? And they just said it won't heal without it. And just knowing what I know now, I did all this research because I know there's a dilemma of, I don't want to kill my kid, right? And
Correct.
this doctor or dermatologist doctor is saying that he has to take it, otherwise it could get worse. And then we put some of the topical cream, and he's better. And I just felt like any other person, because I questioned the doctor in the office, and I said, is it okay if we just don't take the generalized antibiotic? And he said, oh, I know you're scared, but don't worry, just take some probiotics, he'll be fine. It's the most mildest, gentlest one. And I said, oh, I'll do some research, and I left. But obviously I'm a questioner, so I did hours of
Good.
research, and I said, no, I'm good. Like I will take the golden seal, and I'll take other herbals, and he's fine now. But I just, even if a mom questioned and said, they comforted me with the, oh, it's the mildest, don't worry about it, just take some probiotics, he'll be completely fine, it will not destroy his gut. That's exactly what they told me. And it's so hard because that's the narrative.
And that's your child. You want to do what's best. And I can't imagine, oh, that's going to be a tough situation. But
Yeah. So always just do the research, because I don't think doctors have the time or the bandwidth to say, here's all the risks. And I asked my psychiatrist when I was on antipsychotics and antidepressants, does diet have anything to do with my illness? And then he looks up from his pen, writing my next prescription, and says, no. And I said, okay. And we just moved on. And I was plant based then.
because we trust them.
Right. And we trust them. And I think when I was digging into so many different facets writing the book, it made me realize diet is not the only place where people are being falsely led. And I think it's just, if I can just get people to eat right and then have the capacity to think a little bit more and then question the narrative, then they could start thinking about everything else in their lives, right? Even the way we educate our children. My kids don't go to a regular school anymore. I grew up in a public school. I loved it. I don't think it's the same kind of public school anymore. So my kids now go to this alternative school, and yeah, my parents are worried all the time that they're not getting traditional education, but I am completely fine with that, because I also know some of the indoctrination that's happening that I don't want them to learn. So it's just this, if I can just use my platform to help people eat meat based, get their body as robust as possible, immune system as strong as possible, and then you can choose the life you want to live or the things that you want to focus on or question, but at least it's your choice. And I think that's where
Correct.
what you shared is so powerful, because not many people had the courage, honestly, to do what you did and say, you know what? No job, no, as perfect or powerful of a position they gave you, is worth you staying against your medical freedom.
Correct. And I loved my job. I walked away from my dream job, and it has taken, it has taken me being broken to come back on the other side from that and realize it was a blessing and that there is a higher plan, a bigger plan for me. But everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
And I am very blessed that I had that opportunity. But yes, I firmly believe everything happens for a reason. And I still don't know why I was awoken to this and why all of a sudden I went from give me my flu shot, give me whatever you want, give me whatever pill you want, to no more.
Right.
And I just started asking that question, why? And here I am.
I love it. I love it. Okay, guys, again, if you want to watch the full interview uninterrupted, please make sure to go to Rumble and see what the full interview looked like. We just didn't want to take a chance to get censored by including the whole interview, but I have been wanting to share this interview for a very long time. Thank you again to Nora for sharing her story and just sharing her real story of what has happened in the past. And I think for everyone, whether we are pro or against, or we believe in something or not, or even if it's carnivore versus vegan, we have to respect people's opinions and not attack with contempt at first, because the human psyche and nature is that we will never open and change when someone is attacking us. Our natural human inclination is to then become defensive. So if you want people to change, for me, I have friends that are vegans and I would love for them to eat meat, but I am not going to shove down their throat that they should eat meat, because that will never work. So if you have beliefs or things that you want to share, you can always share, you can plant a seed, but always use kindness, because one day they may remember the thing that you said and then they may come back to you and ask and be willing to listen. But using hostility and defensiveness and anger is never a way to get people to comply. All right, guys, make sure to eat a lot of meat. Take care of your bodies, because it is the only place you have to live. I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.